It began with maybe the coldest mic drop a coach has ever done in a pre-match interview. Asked about their opposition, Canada coach Kevin Rouet simply said, "I am not worried about New Zealand." And man, did he have good reason to be, as his team put in one of the all-time great team performances at any level in any form of rugby. Canada this Friday night were sensational, emotional, incredible, faced with the six-time champion Black Ferns team, a side who hadn't lost a World Cup knockout game since 1991, hadn't lost a World Cup game at all since 2014. The Maple Gang stepped up, playing with a pace, accuracy and temperament that the Black Ferns could not live with at all. Out of sight by half-time. If everything I've said sounds a bit like hyperbole, then, whoa, yeah, I think this was one of the best performances by a team I've ever seen in any version of the game. And, you know, it's probably time to get into it as such, because there's so many questions. How did Canada produce that performance? What makes them so deadly? Was anything wrong with New Zealand to allow it to happen? And critically, can they carry this on into next weekend's World Cup final? This team are playing in a World Cup final. It's so exciting. Anytime you want to praise a team or player in women's rugby, there is a core on social media of truly insecure, very tiny and insignificant men who will always try to qualify it with like the best women's rugby player or the most tries by a player without a penis. Yet I've been through and checked, right? The way Canada played on Friday night was a one-off. No team at the Men's Rugby World Cup has ever played with a fastest average ruck speed than Canada did on Friday night. In fact, the closest any team's ever come was almost a full second slower. The only side who's ever played a game of international rugby union, as far as I can find, faster than Canada were on Friday night was them themselves earlier in the tournament against Fiji. It's true from the very off. Canada go through 9 phases in the first 48 seconds of the game, and in one of those they work to whip and make 30 metres. It's an insane ability to move the ball. An enormous part of this, perhaps the biggest on Friday night, was the performance of scrum-half Justin Peltier, a world-class player having the game of her life. Peltier on Friday night was like a reverse greyhound, moving at incredible speed as they whipped balls away instead of chasing them. But the real standout was her speed of thought. There have been very few scrum-halves, even at professional level, even at international level, who can physically play with this pace. A disproportionate of them are Japanese men, but we won't get into that. But I don't know if I've ever seen someone play with the intelligence of option taking that Peltier did in the first half. It was an astonishing, near perfect half of pure scrum-half play, keeping the rest of the team ticking as she kept up a pace like a metronome made of cocaine and overcame the Black Ferns' key tactic to shut them all down. Canada, if you haven't gathered by now, play the fastest rugby in the world. The damage this can do showed repeatedly. Simons here has a great run off the kickoff, 3 defenders committed, and the ruck then takes just 1.8 seconds. There's no real secret to their technique, they're just stupidly quick, everyone gets into position, everyone's technique is excellent, and Peltier plays it away immediately. Because 3 players were needed to stop Florence the Machine, only Tukiafu is on this side, with Walker left watching the 2 further out. As we discussed in our deep dive a few weeks back, Pakwan just fills the space, everybody's standing in a hole, a gap in the Black Ferns defence, and to keep the pace high, Speed Queen Justine picks and goes, forcing Tukiafu to step in, and it allows Pakwan to find the gap and make the half break. Firm body scrambling to get back, but Canada do as Canada will. Cleaning out will just waste time, so Pakwan just hands the ball to unbelievable prop Billy Kamenin, who makes 5 metres before releasing, picking back up, and then making another 10. Now, if there's a trick to their ball speed, it's probably this. Peltier is talking the entire time, and if a forward can hear a tiny French Canadian barking at them, they don't present the ball. They often just release it. Trusting at 2'3", Justine will be the first one there. Canada then play a structure I think virtually every test team will probably be using within 18 months' time. Off the line break, they congest their attack. A big 4-pod takes shape, all of them options, forcing the Ferns defence in reaction to work not just 30 metres backwards, but 20 metres inwards towards this ruck, towards the touchline, to mark up. If there's literally any gap open, Peltier can hit the forward, finding that space, and put them right through. But if the Ferns mark up, then that shuts down, and so Canada can just go in behind. This group also work as blockers. None of the initial forwards can get through on Perry, meaning Olsen Baker, here the player who does, has to come from outside the group, working in the opposite direction the main lines drift towards the far touchline, in towards this one, leaving Michaeli 2 with a huge amount of space to cover alone. It opens a bit of a disconnect between the two of them. This means nobody else can apply any kind of line speed, and a tiny dummy from Shell can put her half through the gap, then offloading to the reloading Simons without even looking. Again, the call coming from behind, everybody knowing where the teammates are going to be, as if their entire bodies are made of sonar. The Ferns hit the breakdown illegally in a moment, and then Amy Back-Ferron goes, here you are, have a penalty, for which they go to the corner, and a few moments later, Asia Hogan-Rochester scores the try in the corner. But perhaps the cleanest example came in the lead up to Flo Simons' try. Canada here play 16 phases across 1 minute and 1 second. When the ball is that fast, the stat to count isn't ruck speed, but phase speed. How long between the ball leaving one ruck and leaving the next, rather than entering and leaving the same one, rather than, just time on the floor. And Canada's average phase speed in this set was around 3.8 seconds. That's genuinely insane. The majority of men's team, that's around their ruck speed. Never mind the whole passage involving the pass and the carry and everything else. It's a product of instinct. The first few phases are played with free pods until one gets legitimate go forward. This cleanup by Caroline Crossley kind of folds in on the Black Ferns ruck, meaning Kalunavale can't assist in the tackle. It'll be either one-on-one or a defender comes in from outside, at which point Canada are really in business with stepping in, narrowing the black line. So, from this phase onwards, Canada shift, now they've got momentum, to 2 pods instead of 3. One player carries, one cleans out, the next pair come in. If needs be, one of them can commit to the ruck, but generally they don't, they just play it instead. Traditional wisdom is to throw an extra body and secure the ball, but if you're fast enough, you beat the turnover chasers at getting there, you're playing it before they've got a chance to slow it down. The third player to arrive doesn't hit the ruck, they just pick and go, and someone else will then come in to help them afterwards. The Ferns defense gets desperate. Look at the players in this tackle here on Totosi. Brunt, Pori Lane and Veliko, prop, centre, scrum-half. And as the Ferns get their ideal personage into position, Peltier goes to spin it wide, but instead hits it short again. The pick and goes keep the forwards involved. None of that back row is able to work out into wide channels, and it also shortens up the rest of the line. Olsen Baker here can no longer help out as centres, and Walker is left playing the Prendergast post-peekaboo game. She's unsure which side she's needed on, and it slows her line speed. She can't play any at all, meaning Pori Lane here then can't apply any herself for fear of being isolated. The shape is lovely. Perry has a flat and a boot option, able to select whichever will give the assist based on how the Ferns defend. If they drift, it goes to Tessier. If they blitz, it goes to Shell. As it is, they hit the captain, who can put a centre partner over in the corner. It's honestly incredible rugby, all caught and extremely accurate. If you're Alan Bunting, right, all week has been spent knowing this is coming and trying to find ways to stop it. However, right, if you're in opposition preparing to play against this team, it is physically impossible to train your players to live with it, because Canada are the only team in the history of rugby union who's ever been capable of playing with this pace. So your team won't be able to practice playing against teams who played this fast. So therefore your only real chance is to slow the ball down. You can do this in theory by contesting the breakdown, but the miracle of this Canadian system is they're often so quick you literally don't have the chance. Their ball presentation across the board is brilliant and every player can clean out flawlessly. Canada won every single one of their exactly 100 rucks on Saturday, 100%, the easiest percentage to work out in the World Cup, and over 90% of them took fewer than 3 seconds, a combination I don't think I've ever seen before in any game. Because they play so many phases, as they did in the lead up to that try, often if you're a flanker, you're left scrambling from one ruck to the next before you can even get there and try and slow one down. The anticipation it requires to affect one ruck is insane, and then they'll just play 3 more and get their pace back. The back row the Black Ferns put out was likely the best for slowing ball down, but it remained very much theoretical. It said the main means of slowing it down was in the tackle, so the Black Ferns adjust their defence a tad to make their first defender away from the ruck, outside the guard, way more aggressive. Olsen Baker is questionably flat here. Foot's in a questionable position, but this is the idea, right? Cut off the passing lanes, take these balls and try and put in huge shots that mean Canada can't get that one front foot carry that allows them to play with such pace. Stop them at source. Get their clean out options working backwards, not forwards, hence slowing the ruck down. Because once the river is flowing, it's incredibly hard to stop, as they found out. There was only one problem, however, and she's 5'2", sharp as a beaver's jaw, and named Justine. Once again, time after time, New Zealand set up like this to fly up to hit the first forward pod, and I'd say on almost every single example, bar that one intercept, and that's some minimum 15 times over the course of the game, Peltier called their bluff, dummying and going herself, or hitting a different forward to isolate the rusher. I don't know how she did it, but she was always alert to this, and consistently, gaps opened up. This is probably the pick of the bunch. It's a nice move. It's not uncommon to run this with your hooker wrapping around to carry the shape, but that'll take too long for this Canada team. They're all about speed, so instead, Prop Hunt folds around and wraps onto the ball because she's physically closer than Totosi, so they'll get going about half a second sooner than if they'd waited for their hooker. The Maple gang have gain line, so Michele 2 flies up and Peltier is able to target the space that opens, running at exactly where she was before shooting into the space. The Ferns defense does a brilliant job over the next few phases, genuinely doing all the things they'd hoped to do. Big first up shots and attacking the breakdown, albeit giving a penalty in the process, but we'll forget about that. Let's just pretend they just slowed it down. Yet, I do kind of love how Canada play this. Instead of taking the tackle, they always look for the offload if they aren't playing on the front foot, even if they are. They might lose a yard or two, sure, but it'll increase the pace and also draw in more tacklers, taking more out of the defence, which for them is worth the yard or two they lose. Peltier is looking at the blindside here, so New Zealand mark up. Pory Lane relocates over to the blindside herself to cover, and concerned, Woodman-Whitcliffe holds her width instead of coming in more central to kind of pendulum into the middle of the field, so if they do go down this side, she can slide in and make the tackle. Except this leaves a space in slightly behind the main line, and it's so well executed. Perry uses the goodie as a screen. Ends up fly up on Sophie, because if she's the option, then literally anything could happen. She could kick a drop goal from here, she could chip and go herself, literally anything. And the wider defenders know, if you look at this setup, it's pretty easy pickings. Canada like to keep hold of the ball, it's what they do, so the chip doesn't seem like a realistic option. It's probably not something they're considering at all, especially with Tessier starting relatively deep here. Pory Lane absent, this has to be on Wacker to cover, but she's so focused on making a big shot on Tessier because she's an easy read here that she can't turn in time. It allows Tessier to win the race, and similar to Menine, rather than clear out, Corrigan just picks and goes. Bremner catches her, but it's a scramble tackle, and she can get the offload in with 2 Canadians round immediately. Simons runs a good support line, and Peltier throws a dummy so great, John Dawes just felt his place in the Hall of Fame quake. Honestly, it's so good. I'm still falling for it every time I watch it back. It's also notable how often they don't use a ruck, with these tiny offloads and pops, so part of it, or presenting the ball up into a teammate's hands to pick and go, to just keep going, flooding through. The team's cohesion and critically communication is as good as any side I've ever seen. That's on both attack and defence. Look at the way Corrigan and Simons here keep chatting over this Black Ferns break and successfully shut it down by covering the space between them. Most other teams concede here, but it's a properly brilliant try-saving tackle by Simons, but it's a co-defensive read between her and Corrigan. Likewise, much as Justin Peltier deserves enough praise and ego stroking for Friday night's performance to make even Jim Hamilton go, that's a bit much, so much of Canada's pace comes from the fact they don't wait around for their pacemaker. Compare this, right, as a carry from Peltier forces Asia Hogan-Rochester to come in and play 9, to when Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe, the greatest the game's ever seen, is asked to come in and do the same. It's night and day. Canada is so well drilled for these situations, for needing to lean on a plan B or C. Fascinatingly, we saw both Peltier and others throwing those dummies to catch the Ferns' line speed out from the start of the game, from the first 3 or 4 minutes. Literally the first time the Black Ferns did it, suggesting it's something Canada had been drilled for. Rouet anticipating how this opposition planned to counter them and coming up with a way round it that could still be used to win yardage during the week. He admitted during the press conference that he'd already started thinking about tactics for the final during the final few minutes of the game, and it makes you wonder what he might have up his sleeve with 8 days to ponder on how you stop the Red Roses. Because this is the core of their system. Every player can play every role. Look at this, right? This is fantastic. The maul is okay, it's perfectly good, but after Pack 1 carries off the back of it, the Maple Leaf forwards fold open side only for last second to Goody to read it, to spot what's going on blindside and switch from her second row frame to a fly half brain. She flashes blindside, overruling the play Peltier's called seconds earlier. The 9 goes with her and trusts her, taking out one tackler, allowing De Goody to adjust onto this. The line she picks is outstanding, fading back onto the inside to force Pory Lane to commit on her, turn her back a little bit. It's proper fly half shit, and it allows Crossley to free Hogan-Rochester down the short side. They dart and dance and do outstandingly well to stay in play, as De Goody herself then comes into play 9 because she's closer to it than Peltier, even if only by an inch and by a split second. Totosi has no support. Some teams may have waited till she had someone there to clean out, but no. Canada know that doing that only gives more Ferns more chance to arrive too, so they just hit it up, De Goody herself folding in and cleaning out. They pull one pick and go, and the Black Ferns honeypot then around the ruck, expecting exactly what we saw in the lead up to the Simons try. Instead though, Peltier immediately throws this insanely brilliant ball. From a Kiwi POV, the wind-up looks like it's going to Perry. It still looks like it's going to Perry, until pretty much the second it flies across her face. A couple of runners here keep the forwards in tight, opening a gap between Bremner and her centres, both of which have started narrow, not expecting it to come out so soon, but banking on the fact that if it does, it comes via Perry. The skip pass gets the ball outside both before they can adjust, and Wacker is very aware of the situation she's found herself in here. Woodman-Whitcliffe is between the posts. Holmes way out wide with 5 Canadians opposite the 3 of them, so if they're going to stop that, Wacker will have to cover 1, 2, 3, which allows PWW to take 4 if they're going to kill the move. Number 1 is taken care of by the skip pass, so Walker goes, brilliant, this is going wide, I'm just going to work straight out to number 3 to cover them, except that opens a gap for number 2 to go straight through. Tessier throws a little step and dives over. It's a brilliant bit of all-court total rugby. The second row and the centre both equally able to slot in and play 10, done with absolute pace, defence unable to keep up. But the thing is, right, this was not a bad performance by the Black Ferns. They were decent. They were perfectly good. They were good enough to beat pretty much any other team in the tournament, bar maybe Canada and England. There weren't mistakes or inaccuracies, much as I think the story of this game down the years may go on to suggest so. Canada just did to them what New Zealand national rugby teams have been doing to oppositions for over 100 years. Your team is playing, and they're playing alright, but it doesn't feel like they're in the game. The opposition have taken the protagonist tag so hard and so firm, you feel like you're only ever watching them and then seeing a team respond to whatever they do in the black jersey. It just happened with the red team pulling it, or the white team. It just happened the other way around this weekend. Look at how accurate and well taken Kalunavale's try was, right? This was not a bad performance. Waka takes the restart brilliantly, and they're so fast into shape, playing this extremely spot-on and instinctive rugby. Yet it's extremely telling that the Black Ferns resurgence was birthed by a risky play on their own line, as it's about the first time Canada allowed them to do anything on their own terms over the game, assuming they'd be fine because they're on the try line, being very passive in defence. Rui Demant started quite quiet, but second half, she was extraordinary, as good as any 10 could ever be in the circumstances, manufacturing comeback almost entirely herself through a subtle kicking game that changed their emphasis of the Black Ferns attack, their philosophy on the match. For 54 minutes, New Zealand tried to open the space by making big carries, by hitting wide lines, by using lovely passing movements, by pulling defenders in with attack and shape management. Deep on their own line, Demant decided enough was enough. Instead of trying to bring the space to them, they would just put the ball into the space and see what happened. It comes off with this chip, eventually stopped by the brilliant cover from Corrigan and Simons we'd mentioned earlier, but then not too long afterwards, we should be caught up now, yeah, brilliant. Shell has more time than she thinks here, but with nobody around her, she has no time to turn, and all she knows is Portia is going to get there anytime soon, so puts it out. Just put the ball into the space and see what happens, whether you regather, whether it causes the opposition to panic and think they've got less time than they do. The Ferns score from that almost instantaneously. Mikelaitu plays what's in front of her. Fly half Taylor Perry calls her support across, begins to drift out, still adjusting to the position between her and Menin, similar to Waka a moment earlier, thinking I'm going to have to double or triple job when this goes wide, and accidentally leaves her tight head with way too much ground to cover, allowing Mikelaitu to get on the outside and crash over. It's a really well taken try. Simple pictures, well presented, identifying stress points in the defence and taking them. It's the Black Ferns way. Whenever they got a chance to be themselves, they did it, and they were excellent. They just got outmatched by another team playing their way and their natural game, much louder, more often, and on top on the day. Rue's suggestion, I'm not worried about New Zealand, sounds badass, but proved to be a stroke of genius. Never once did Canada look like they're approaching this game any differently to those against Wales or Scotland or Australia in past weeks. They're perhaps the most trust the process team I've seen since the 2019 Welsh men's side. This game plan works, so they play it over and over from everywhere, knowing that it results in tries whenever they get it right. So we'll stick to it and we'll win the game. It's tiny in the context of the full match, but Canada running the same exit play here after penalty advantage is called twice, I think tells you kind of everything about this team. No matter what, they follow through on process. They follow the same ideas, the same philosophy on the game. Just unlike that Cymru side, the men's Springboks, or even the Red Roses, that process isn't a closed system. It isn't a set of guidelines, it's more a philosophy than a structure. A set of shared ideals on how you play the game, on shared ideas, which everybody can then improvise within. It's honestly genius. It takes a lot of work to get right, quite clearly in the background, but if you can do it, it gets the most out of an entire team, and we saw that on Friday night, with the sheer number of unbelievable performances. If Fabiola Forteza plays as extraordinarily well as she did on Friday night, putting the exact same performance in 99% of other games she'll ever play, she will get player of the match. Yet on Friday, I'm not sure she cracks the top 5 performances amongst her own team, even taking up those by Demant and Kaipo Olsen-Baker, who were both absolutely brilliant for the Black Ferns. Dalika Menin was just remarkable. 2 20-plus metre runs, rock solid in a scrum the Black Ferns really targeted for the team selection, and I don't know if I've ever seen a prop with a higher rugby IQ than her. Courtney O'Donnell and Caroline Crossley were both relentless. I thought both were brilliant. The wingers were exceptional. Hogan Rochester saw more ball, but they continued to do so much with it, producing such bullshit yardage on every touch. Whilst Corrigan, missing this in the last few minutes, honestly, was a little bit of like a minor heartbreak for me, because up until then she'd been legitimately flawless. Defensively, she's so good and so smart. The Black Ferns looked for so much wide ball early on, so often down her wing, and several times we saw the Ferns think they'd work space out wide, only for her to make a stunning defensive read. Sometimes a drift, sometimes a blitz, always situational, but always shutting it down, trusting that rugby IQ the team are built around. Whilst Alex Tessier produced a late charge on Peltier's player of the match title by teaming her try with some tag team game management with Taylor Perry. Both of them excellent. Second watch really opened up how good Taylor Perry was, by the way. Worth watching this game like 16 times, I reckon. Unless you're Kiwi, in which case, commiserations. As a Welsh fan, it's hard to feel too much when you won 6 World Cups, but, I'm sure this was difficult. New Zealand have just got a couple of tries here, and momentum has majorly swung. So this is exceptional game management by Taylor Perry. She just dinks it in deep, looking for a bounce, but even if Demant covers it as well as she does, it's at an angle, right? She can't just regather, she can't really run this back, she hasn't got any momentum. So Demant calls the mark, and Perry has already retreated. She regathers, puts another kick, and this time she does find the bounce, and it almost causes the knock on for Sorensen McGee, who then instead just sends it into touch, knowing they're under pressure, fine, whatever, right? Canada here suffer a net loss of 4 meters over this kicking exchange, but by the time the ball's back in, by the moment it's in play, it's eaten a full 80 seconds off the clock and taken away the firm's momentum. They're now close to full time, and the mindset of just running everything has been taken away from them by being put in situations where doing so was suicidal twice. It's really smart. Tessier herself then repeats the trick a little later, not looking for the 50-22 here, just to put the Ferns in a tricky spot. Then the following kick is even better, infield and causing chaos. But, we do really have to talk about her, because she was sensational. Sophie, goddamn de goody. Selecting the Goody's best attribute right now is the true Sophie's choice. I think it's even harder than the one Meryl Streep was presented with, as she's a near-perfect rugby player. Her try is brilliantly worked. In our preview, Will highlighted this move that her and Peltier love to run, and we almost saw it here. Peltier drifts out, then the Goody cuts back in. The idea is to drag a defender out of 9 and reopen it on the inside, and if this ball is caught cleanly, the Goody is under the sticks. But shortly after, some great disruption at the ruck leads to Peltier going on an adventure here, and the Goody then calls it in a split second. She's not initially looking to run this move, she just sees it on and readjusts. Again, her fly-off brain in action. And without a second to assess it or even check if the Goody's there, Peltier just trusts her teammate and hangs it in the air. The pass comes and the Goody runs it in under the bar. She's just so bright, as well as so talented and capable in every area of the game. Make no mistake, right? If Canada play like they did on Friday night in the final, they will win the World Cup. Canada will win the World Cup. Imagine, we could be looking at a situation where Canada are world champions in a few days' time. The way that blows World Rugby wide open is incredible. With this new, beautiful way of playing, all core, every player trusted, rugby IQ prioritized with an incredible level of pace and accuracy. Kevin Rowe has built something truly remarkable, and it's one of rugby's real habits that we could see take on, right? Whatever style of play wins the World Cup becomes quickly a trend. Every team adopts part of it. The meta molds around that side. Look at how much more defensive and physical men's rugby has become the last 6 years for the Springboks taking that trophy in 2019. If Canada do the same, how does this change rugby as a whole, but particularly women's rugby? I'm so excited to see it. I want to see it. What Canada do, other teams can't replicate one-to-one. It's a bespoke style, but one built around producing the smartest squad possible rather than the biggest or the fastest or the strongest. And it's so exciting. A Canada win on Saturday could change the game forever from a tactical POV, but also from a pure sporting drama sense. Because the tier system is officially built purely on the men's game, regardless of this team's perpetual top 4 status, Canada are currently a tier 2 nation. So think about it, right? On Saturday, in the midst of World Rugby screwing over the smaller unions with the creation of the World League and restructuring of the WXV they announced this week, which we'll get into another time, a tier 2 nation could win the World Cup this week. If Canada do it, everyone else in the sport has reason to dream. Think big enough, play smart enough, invest in your talent, find the right coach, and the world could be yours. It changes the underdog equation in rugby union completely. The game was bookended by Justin Peltier in a post-match player of the match interview, saying something that I think captured this Canadian team just as completely as Rouet's throwaway comment at the start of the match.
Rugby. I think it's just fun to play rugby, and
this team enjoy playing together as one in this style. Because ultimately, right, this is a team who make me feel like they are truly, in the old school sense of the word, playing. Like in the way you play as a kid to have fun. They seem like they're enjoying the way they play in a World Cup semi-final. And if a team like that can go on and win the World Cup, I think it might just make me fall in love with the game. The hardest I ever have. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. There's so much more we've been doing around the World Cup over on More Squad Rugby, our second channel. We'll be reviewing the England v France game over there very soon, if you want to have a look at that. We'll have a preview on this channel in a few days' time, on Thursday, most likely, once the teams are named. So that'll be coming for you. We've got loads more going on. We've looked at every single game of this World Cup between the two channels, so please go and have a look over on More Squad Rugby if you haven't seen any of that. And we will be back with plenty more for this World Cup, for this going on. We'll be there at the World Cup final on Saturday as well, so please
say a passive hello if you do see me and Will there. And otherwise, we'll see you soon for more rugby.
Yeah, well, that was crazy. It was a lot of tempo and a lot of rugby. I think it's just fun to play rugby, and I think we show what rugby can be and what can be inspiring in rugby.
I need to review the game at the end. I'm already lost in the game now, so yeah, I have to review it.